The moment Elon Musk said humanoid robots could outnumber humans 3-1 on this planet, most people laughed. A few rolled their eyes, and almost nobody stopped to ask the one question that actually matters. What happens to the economy, to wages, to work itself, if he is even partially right? Because this is not a story about robots. This is a story about what happens when labor, for the first time in human history, stops being a fixed resource. Right now, there are roughly 3.5 billion people in the global workforce. Every factory, every hospital, every warehouse, every farm on Earth depends on that number. It took thousands of years of population growth to build a workforce that size. And for all of recorded history, if you wanted more workers, you had one option. Wait for more people to be born, raise them, educate them, and hope they showed up. Labor has always been the hard ceiling, the thing you cannot simply manufacture more of. Tesla thinks it found a way around that ceiling. The company that most people still think of as a car company has been quietly pivoting to something far more consequential. Production lines at the Fremont factory in California are being retooled right now, not for a new sedan or a pickup truck, but to manufacture 1 million humanoid robots per year by the end of 2026. A second facility at Gigafactory, Texas, is being built for 10 million units per year starting in 2027. These are not concept drawings. They are not slides from a conference. Steel is being welded. Concrete is being poured. The infrastructure is going in the ground today. And here is where the scale becomes difficult to process. Walmart is the largest private employer in human history. 2.3 million people work for Walmart. No single private organization has ever come close to that number. It represents one of the most complex logistical and management achievements ever constructed by a corporation. Walmart's workforce took decades to build, across thousands of locations, in hundreds of countries, through billions of dollars in recruitment, training, and retention. 10 million robots per year would surpass that entire workforce in a single year of production. Not over a decade. In 12 months. But Elon Musk is not thinking in terms of 10 million. In January of 2025, Musk said publicly that he expects a ratio of 3-1, 4-1, perhaps 5-1, robots to humans on this planet. Do the math on that. With 8 billion people on Earth, that means 20 to 30 billion robots in the long-term scenario he is describing. To put that in perspective, the global workforce today is 3.5 billion. Musk is describing a robot population that is nearly 10 times the size of every human worker on Earth combined. Now, you could dismiss that as classic Musk overreach. He has a long history of setting timelines that slip, of making projections that seem disconnected from physical reality. And the skeptics are not quiet about this. Rodney Brooks, the co-founder of iRobot and one of the most respected figures in robotics, called these visions pure fantasy thinking. He pointed to the fundamental coordination challenges that make truly autonomous humanoid robots extraordinarily difficult to build. The Washington Post noted that Tesla has a history of overpromising on timelines. Deutsche Welle's tech experts called the project, in their words, a complete and utter scam. Those criticisms are worth taking seriously. But here is the thing about dismissing the whole story because the most extreme numbers sound absurd. You miss the part that is already happening. Robot costs dropped 40% between 2022 and 2024. Human labor costs in the European Union rose 5% during that same period. Those two trend lines are moving in opposite direct directions, and they will eventually cross. Bain & Company, the global management consulting firm, put a timeline on it. Within 5 years, robots will likely be able to perform a wide range of physical tasks at a cost that rivals or beats human labor. Goldman Sachs projects the humanoid robot industry alone will reach $154 billion by 2035. Bank of America is forecasting that more people will own humanoid robots than cars by 2060. 3 billion robots versus 1.5 billion cars. These are not fringe analysts. These are the firms that manage the retirement savings of ordinary Americans. So why is this happening now? Why are some of the most sophisticated financial institutions in the world suddenly paying serious attention to humanoid robots? Because the labor problem is real, it is already here, and it is getting worse. By 2030, The global manufacturing sector is projected to face a shortage of 8 million workers. That shortage is not theoretical. It translates directly into $607 billion in unrealized revenue, factories that cannot be staffed, orders that cannot be filled, products that cannot be made. Japan already has a nursing care sector where there is one job applicant for every 4.25 open positions. 380,000 care worker positions in Japan cannot be filled. And Japan's situation is an early warning for what Germany, South Korea, Italy, and eventually the United States are heading into as populations age and birth rates decline. China, which has the largest manufacturing workforce on Earth, installed 295,000 industrial robots in 2024 alone. That is 54% of all the industrial robots installed globally in a single year. China is not automating because it is lazy. China is automating because its working-age population is shrinking, and the factory owners who keep the global supply chain running need a solution that demographics cannot provide. This is the economic environment that Tesla is walking into with Optimus. And the economic logic, when you actually run the numbers, starts to look uncomfortably plausible. At $10,000 per unit, which is Musk's long-term cost target at scale, a robot costs less than 1 year of full-time work at the federal minimum wage. It does not take a vacation. It does not call in sick. It does not need health insurance or a retirement plan. It can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Musk claims each Optimus unit is 5 times more productive than a human worker. Even if that number is half right, even if the actual productivity gain is 2.5 times, the return on investment for any company deploying robots at that price becomes mathematically compelling within months, not years. Morgan Stanley put it clearly in a research note aimed at institutional investors. As the growth of the working-age population in advanced economies continues to decline, humanoids may prove to be a requirement for industries that are already facing difficulty attracting enough workers to remain productive. A requirement, not an upgrade, not a luxury, a requirement. This is the point in the story where most people start to feel something shift. We have been through industrial revolutions before. The first one, powered by steam and coal, moved labor out of agriculture and into factories over roughly 80 years. It reduced average annual working hours from around 3,000 to 1,500, a 50% drop over a century and a half. It was violent in its disruption. Entire ways of life disappeared. New ones emerged. The electrification of factories in the late 1800s enabled production that never stopped, regardless of daylight. The assembly line cut the time to build a car from over 12 hours to 93 minutes and triggered a cascade of economic transformation that reshaped the American middle class. Computing automated information processing. The internet globalized labor markets overnight. Every single one of those revolutions changed what human work meant, and every single one of them was met at first with the same mix of awe, dismissal, and fear that you are probably feeling right now. Here is what was different about all of those revolutions. They automated specific tasks. Steam automated mechanical lifting. Electricity automated light and heat. Computers automated data processing. Each transformation was powerful, but it was bounded. It automated one dimension of human capability. Humanoid robots, combined with the kind of artificial intelligence that is now being embedded into these systems, can automate both physical labor and cognitive decision-making simultaneously. A robot that can navigate a warehouse, identify objects, make decisions about how to sort them, and adapt to unexpected obstacles is not a specialized machine. It is a general-purpose worker. That is the thing nobody has ever built before at scale. Tesla is not the only company chasing this. Boston Dynamics, Figure, Agility Robotics, Apptronik, and more than 50 other companies have each raised over $100 million in the humanoid robotics race. Global investment in humanoid robotics went from $700 million in 2018 to $4.3 billion in 2025. That is a 6-fold increase in 7 years. The money is not going in because investors are optimistic about science projects. The money is going in because the people managing it believe this technology will reach economic viability. Now here is the question that nobody seems to be asking loudly enough. What does a world look like when labor is no longer a fixed resource? Throughout all of human civilization, Economic growth has been constrained by the number of people available to do work. Population determined capacity. You could be more efficient, you could invent better tools, you could improve logistics. But at the end of the day, the ceiling on what your society could produce was tied to how many working people you had and how many hours they could physically sustain. That constraint shaped everything. It shaped wages, because workers had leverage when they were scarce. It shaped geopolitics, because nations with large young populations had economic advantages over aging ones. It shaped immigration policy, because importing labor was one of the few ways to expand the workforce faster than your birth rate allowed. If you remove that constraint, even partially, none of the old models work anymore. Morgan Stanley projected that 63 million humanoid robots could be operating in the United States by 2050. That is roughly 38% of the current American workforce, replaced or supplemented by machines that work every hour of every day. $3 trillion in annual wages affected. That is not disruption in the sense that tech journalists use the word casually. That is a structural transformation of the American economy on a scale that has no historical precedent. And Tesla, if its production targets are even half achieved, would be at the center of it. Here is a number that Musk stated in a recent earnings call. Optimus has the potential to generate $10 trillion in revenue. He also said in a post on his social platform that 80% of Tesla's value will eventually come from Optimus bots, not from cars. If you believe that, then Tesla is not an automobile company that is experimenting with robots. Tesla is a robotics and artificial intelligence company that happened to start with cars. So here is the question worth sitting with as you think about everything you just heard. We have spent decades debating what automation does to jobs. We have watched software replace bank tellers and travel agents and switchboard operators. We built an entire political language around that disruption. But all of those conversations assumed a fundamental limit. Machines could replace specific jobs, but humans would always have a role that was uniquely theirs. Physical presence, physical dexterity, judgment in uncontrolled environments. We told ourselves that was the moat. That was what made human labor irreplaceable in the long run. What happens if that assumption is wrong? What if the most consequential product Tesla ever builds is not the Model S, not the Cybertruck, not a battery, but a workforce? A workforce that can scale. A workforce that can be manufactured. A workforce that, in theory, has no upper limit except the capacity of the factories that produce it. Is that a future worth preparing for, or one worth fearing? Because the production lines going into Fremont right now suggest that question is no longer hypothetical. For the kind of analysis that helps you see around corners before the rest of the world catches on, hit subscribe. The shifts happening in this industry are too fast and too large to follow casually, and you do not want to be caught off guard by what is coming.